When did marriage stop making sense for smart men? The smartest men in America, the ones who studied hard, built six-figure careers, and own their condos before 30 aren't getting married anymore. Not because they can't, because they won't. For decades, society told men that marriage was the final badge of success, a sign that you'd made it. But now, the very men who were supposed to line up at the altar are quietly walking away from it. No anger, no heartbreak, just a calm, calculated choice. This deal doesn't make sense anymore. You've probably seen it yourself. The friend with the Tesla, the passport full of stamps, and the stress-free life still single. Not lonely, not confused, just free. Meanwhile, every family dinner turns into the same interrogation. When are you going to settle down? Here's the irony. These men already have. They've settled into clarity, into peace, into freedom from a system that no longer rewards their effort. This isn't about fear of commitment. It's about awareness. It's about men realizing that the old promise of marriage security, partnership, stability has been replaced by risk, legal traps, and emotional debt. Something fundamental has shifted. And if you listen closely, you can hear the quiet rebellion spreading across boardrooms, co-working spaces, and coffee shops. Stay till the end. You'll see why the smartest men alive are no longer chasing rings. They're chasing freedom. Here's where the story turns cold. The reason smart men are stepping back isn't emotional. It's mathematical. They started treating marriage like any other major investment, one that deserves due diligence. And when they opened the spreadsheet, the numbers didn't whisper. They screamed. A man making $120,000 a year, single, disciplined, and strategic, can often keep 10 grand more in his pocket than a married man with the same income. The so-called marriage bonus that used to reward couples has quietly flipped into a hidden tax. Two high earners sign the contract, and suddenly Uncle Sam treats them like one oversized target. Deductions vanish. Credits phase out. Every joint dollar pushes them higher into a bracket they'd never hit alone. And that's before we even talk about the real landmine divorce. The modern legal system isn't built for fairness. It's built for finality. Once you step into that courtroom, it doesn't matter who worked harder, who saved more, or who sacrificed longer. The process itself bleeds you dry. $15,000 to $30,000, gone just in legal fees. That's the entry price to the casino. And if kids, property, or unequal earnings are involved, the stakes explode. A single ruling can turn decades of progress into debt overnight. So when a man looks at the contract and says no, he's not rejecting love. He's rejecting risk. This is not fear of intimacy. It's foresight. He sees how fragile protection really is. Prenups can be overturned. Assets can be frozen. Promises can dissolve faster than trust. Even the conversation about protection, bringing up a prenup at dinner, can poison the relationship before it begins. So he chooses the simplest insurance policy of all: stay single. No court, no split assets, no ticking bomb tied to his signature. The math tells a brutal truth. For men who've worked their entire 20s to build financial independence, marriage isn't a milestone, it's a liability. The reward is uncertain. The downside is catastrophic. And once you've seen those numbers, you can't unsee them. That's why the new generation of men isn't running away from marriage in fear. They're walking away in clarity. Because in 2025, being single isn't reckless anymore. It's rational. Money isn't the only thing on the line. The deeper cost hits harder, and it can't be calculated on a spreadsheet. It's the slow erosion of freedom, the quiet tax that creeps in after the honeymoon fades. A man spends years building a life on his own terms. He learns discipline, builds habits, and protects his focus like it's sacred. Then marriage arrives, and suddenly every decision becomes a committee vote. What used to be a simple yes turns into a negotiation. Dinner plans, weekends, even hobbies require a discussion, a compromise, a signature of approval. It starts small: a new couch he didn't ask for, a weekend trip he didn't plan, a shared budget that turns personal goals into our goals. Over time, his individuality softens, his financial autonomy shrinks, and the freedom he worked for starts slipping through the cracks. Researchers call this the behavioral mortgage. It's not about debt in dollars, it's debt in decisions. Every day, a man makes hundreds of micro-choices that reinforce who he is. When those choices are diluted, his identity blurs. The independence that once fueled his ambition becomes a memory. Many men describe it as a loss of air. They can't point to one moment when it happens. It's a gradual tightening, like a door that quietly closes behind them. One of my friends, an aerospace engineer, said it best. I woke up one morning and realized I had to ask permission to grab beers with my friends. I'm 35 and somehow I need a hall pass. That sentence isn't bitter. It's honest. It captures a truth that too many men whisper about, but rarely say out loud: the slow suffocation of autonomy. And it's not just the emotional space. There's the financial suffocation too. Lifestyle inflation creeps in like fog. Two incomes become one budget, then one endless list of shared expenses. A bigger couch, a better car, a kitchen remodel he didn't care about. Before long, his personal capital, the money he once used to explore, to learn, to grow, gets swallowed by domestic necessities. He used to save for a surf trip. Now he's saving for a nursery. He used to buy tools for his side hustle. Now he's paying for matching bath towels. None of these things are evil, but they come at a quiet, compounding cost. This isn't about resentment toward women. It's about awareness of trade-offs. The modern man understands that freedom isn't just physical, it's financial, it's psychological. It's the ability to move without asking, to say no without guilt. So when he chooses to stay single, it's not rebellion, it's preservation. He's not afraid of love, he's afraid of losing himself. And that's the real price, not the legal fees or the tax penalties, but the invisible toll on a man's identity. Because when freedom goes, drive follows. Ambition fades. The mind that once solved complex problems starts calculating emotional landmines instead. Smart men have learned this pattern. They've seen mentors, uncles, friends, all once sharp, confident, unstoppable, become cautious, muted versions of themselves. And they've decided to break the cycle, not by avoiding connection, but by protecting sovereignty. Because the modern man doesn't just want to live, he wants to live uninterrupted. After watching how freedom quietly fades inside a legal contract, many men have started doing something different. They're not turning cold or cynical. They're just changing the format. Modern relationships haven't died, they've evolved. The new version isn't built on vows and paperwork. It's built on choice. Cohabitation has become the ultimate substitute. Two people can share rent, share space, even share dreams without merging their legal identities. It's the relationship model of the modern age, connection without captivity. Today, more than 70% of couples live together before even considering marriage. But here's what's quietly happening behind that statistic for many men. That trial run never ends. It's not a delay, it's a decision. They get the companionship, the intimacy, the stability, all the parts of partnership that matter, but they keep something far more valuable: an exit ramp. If it doesn't work out, no lawyers, no judges, no financial bloodbath, just a moving truck and a new address. It sounds transactional, but it's actually liberating. It gives both people room to stay because they want to, not because they have to. That small psychological difference changes everything. When you can leave freely, every day together becomes a choice, not an obligation. The relationship becomes lighter, more honest, more human. The old system was built on permanence, till death do us part. But permanence is no longer proof of love. It's often proof of fear. Fear of change. Fear of what society might say if something ends. The new system rewards transparency. Two adults agreeing. Let's be together as long as it makes us better. That's not weakness, that's clarity. And it's not just emotional clarity, it's financial safety. Living together without the legal tether protects both sides from the chaos that follows when love turns into litigation. For men who've watched friends lose homes, savings, and sanity in a courtroom, this model feels like common sense. It's not about dodging responsibility. It's about refusing to pay a legal price for emotional honesty. Because when you strip away the cultural guilt, you realize something powerful: cohabitation is the most rational expression of modern love. It balances closeness with autonomy. It offers intimacy without imprisonment. It's not about avoiding commitment. It's about redefining it. Not avoiding love, but avoiding legal traps. This shift isn't fueled by bitterness. It's fueled by data and observation. Men have realized that you can have loyalty without paperwork, connection without contracts, and genuine love without a lifetime clause. And for a generation raised on risk management, that sounds like the smartest deal they've ever seen. The irony. The relationships that start without legal pressure often last longer. Because both people stay engaged out of choice, not compliance. That's the quiet revolution happening right now. Love redesigned around freedom. And for men who value their independence as much as their affection, this isn't rebellion, it's evolution. Cohabitation didn't just appear out of nowhere. It rose from the ashes of an old contract that no longer works. For generations. Marriage was simple economics the man earned, the woman nurtured. It was a division of labor that made sense in a world where one income could support an entire family. But that world is gone. Today, your partner might be a surgeon, a software CEO, or a creative who earns more than you do. The modern economy rewards skills, not gender. Yet, the ghost of that old deal still haunts the culture. Society still whispers that a man should provide, even when his partner doesn't need providing for. That's the paradox. If he earns less, he feels inadequate. If he earns more, he feels like a walking paycheck. Either way, he loses. So, the question smart men now ask isn't, when will I settle down? But why would I enter a system where the rules are rigged? The traditional deal man trades resources for partnership and legacy has collapsed under the weight of new economics. Dual-income households don't create balance. They often double the stress. 2 careers mean 2 schedules, 2 egos, and twice the competition for time and peace. What was once a partnership of survival has become a negotiation of status. And many men are realizing they don't need that validation anymore. They don't need to prove their worth through a wedding certificate or a mortgage with someone else's name on it. Instead, they're investing that same energy into something modern society now celebrates: self-mastery, freedom, growth, travel, mental health, financial independence. These are the new status symbols. The cultural script has flipped completely. Decades ago, being single past 30 meant you were broken. Today, it means you're focused, you're building, you're selective. You can see it in social media, too. The content that goes viral isn't about finally getting married. It's about escaping the 9-to-5, building freedom, investing early, living on your own terms. Independence has replaced marriage as the modern badge of success, and women are feeling the same shift. Many of them are just as uninterested in playing old roles. They're not looking for someone to save them. They're looking for someone who matches their autonomy. That's the irony: both genders evolved, but the institution didn't. The software of marriage is still running on outdated code. In that light, opting out doesn't look like rebellion anymore. It looks like adaptation. Because the truth is, the stigma is gone. The single man isn't the odd one out, he's the prototype of a new cultural phase. In many urban circles, marriage isn't the milestone, it's the detour. You can feel the energy shift. In big cities, in co-working spaces, in online communities, success is no longer measured by who you marry, but by what you build. The applause that used to greet a wedding ring now greets a passport stamp, a startup launch, a personal transformation. This is the collapse of the old deal and the rise of something far more personal, far more powerful. The modern man isn't escaping love. He's escaping a legacy that stopped serving him. Once you step outside the old deal, you start asking new questions. If marriage isn't the finish line anymore, what actually makes life fulfilling? What creates lasting happiness? Psychologists have been studying that question for decades. The data is brutally honest. The happiness boost people feel after a wedding is real, but temporary. Within 2 years, most couples return to their pre-marriage baseline. It's a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. In simple terms, humans adjust fast. Even good things become ordinary once they settle in. The house that felt like a dream last year feels small today. The car you once adored becomes background noise. Marriage is no exception. The first months bring excitement, novelty, and dopamine. But over time, routine takes over. The thrill fades, and what remains is management schedules, chores, obligations, small compromises that slowly replace passion with predictability. Smart men have seen this pattern play out in real time. And instead of chasing that one emotional high, they're designing their lives for repeatable fulfillment. It's a different kind of game, not one grand victory, but a series of small, intentional wins. A man books a solo surf trip to Bali. He learns to fly a plane. He masters investing, builds a side business, or hits a new personal best in the gym. Each win delivers a fresh pulse of energy, confidence, and momentum. It's not about escaping responsibility. It's about engineering a life that stays alive. Because happiness isn't a permanent state, it's a rhythm. The men who understand this stop chasing stability as a goal and start treating it as a platform. Stability gives them space to explore, grow, and challenge themselves again and again. In this model, fulfillment becomes scalable. You can build more of it by stacking experiences, skills, and memories, things that compound over time like interest. That's the quiet secret of modern contentment. It's not found in one big life event. It's found in motion, in growth, in constant self-renewal. The married man often invests everything in one emotional stock, his relationship. When it underperforms, his happiness portfolio crashes. The single man diversifies. He spreads his joy across health, travel, learning, creativity, friendships. When one area dips, the others keep him afloat. It's not detachment, it's design. And the irony: the men who live this way often end up more emotionally balanced, more available, and more peaceful than they've ever been. Because their happiness doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or consistency. They've redefined success as sustained energy, not emotional peaks. That's the new definition of fulfillment. Not chasing a single milestone that fades, but cultivating momentum that endures. Not one big happily ever after, but a lifetime of small, deliberate highs. That's what freedom feels like. That's what peace actually looks like. Once a man stops chasing the traditional definition of happiness, something powerful happens. He starts treating his life like a portfolio, not a checklist. Every choice becomes an investment. Every habit becomes a dividend. And every experience becomes a new asset that compounds over time. In that mindset, marriage looks less like security and more like an illiquid investment. It's costly to enter, expensive to exit, and comes with no guarantee of appreciation. For a man who values adaptability, that's the ultimate red flag. Smart men now optimize for liquidity. They keep their options open. Their leases are flexible, their careers remote, their assets global. They prioritize freedom over permanence. Why? Because in a world that changes faster every year, flexibility is the new wealth. A man who can pack a bag, fly across the ocean, and still earn from his laptop has more leverage than a man tied to a mortgage and a joint checking account. His cost of living drops. His peace rises. And his sense of control, the rarest form of wealth, becomes unshakable. This new life design isn't about running away. It's about running light. The modern man doesn't need to own everything. He needs to access anything. From Lisbon to Bali to Medellin. Men are discovering a truth that generations before them couldn't imagine. That geography itself can be hacked. Live where you're treated best. Bank where you're taxed least. Work where you're inspired most. It's not about evasion. It's evolution. And this mobility brings with it another revelation. Legacy doesn't have to mean children or marriage anymore. Legacy now wears different faces. It's mentoring. It's funding a scholarship. It's building something that lasts, a company, a project, a platform that helps others rise. Some men support nieces, nephews, or co-parent with like-minded partners through clear agreements that protect both sides. They've separated the instinct to create from the need to conform, not avoiding legacy, but redefining it. The modern man's name might not be written on a wedding certificate, but it can live forever on the title page of a book, a foundation, or a story that changes someone else's life. He understands that meaning isn't inherited, it's built. The old playbook said legacy was bloodline. The new one says it's impact. That's why so many of these men look calmer, stronger, and more fulfilled than ever. They're not waiting for validation from family photos or anniversary posts. They're too busy building things that last longer than a hashtag. When you view life as a portfolio, you stop chasing permanence. You start chasing potential. Because freedom, like compound interest, grows fastest when you stop trying to own everything and start designing with intention. In this new model, a man's greatest asset isn't what he signs, it's what he chooses not to sign. The writing is already on the wall. The cultural tipping point isn't coming, it's here. Marriage rates in the U.S. have dropped from more than 70% in the 1960s to under 50% today. Each recession, each wave of layoffs, each surge in student debt pushes more men from maybe someday to probably never. This isn't rebellion, it's data-driven adaptation. The men opting out aren't anti-love, they're anti-risk. They've looked at the numbers, the outcomes, and the reality of modern relationships and made the same conclusion a good investor would: the return no longer matches the risk. For decades, culture told men that the good life began at the altar, that the ring was a reward, a validation, a finish line. But the modern man has run the simulation and realized that for him, that altar isn't a finish line, it's a trap door. So he built a new script, one based on mobility, self-mastery, and autonomy. One that values peace over appearances and purpose over validation. Of course, the counter-arguments still echo. But companionship makes people live longer. But marriage gives you tax breaks. Yes, but only in low-conflict, high-trust marriages. Only for those lucky enough to find alignment that rarely exists in modern, dual-career life. For most high-performing men, the math still bleeds red. The energy it takes to maintain that harmony could be fueling growth, creation, and genuine fulfillment instead. The modern man isn't against partnership. He's against the version of partnership that punishes him for caring. That's the quiet revolution unfolding right now, not loud, not bitter, but precise. Engineers, creatives, founders, and professionals are quietly choosing to live untethered. They still love, they still connect, but they refuse to surrender their freedom as the price of affection. They've learned that intimacy can exist without legal bondage. That purpose can replace validation. That fulfillment can come from creation, not confirmation. And this shift is contagious. Gen Z and younger millennials no longer romanticize marriage the way their parents did. They're building lives around independence, travel, and creative freedom. In their world, staying single isn't a red flag, it's a power move. We are watching the social script flip in real time. What used to earn applause now earns sympathy. What used to feel rebellious now feels responsible. This is not about bitterness, it's about balance. Because in the end, smart men aren't fleeing from love, they're fleeing from a broken contract. They're not giving up on connection, they're redefining it. The future belongs to those who design their lives with intention, men who understand that freedom isn't the absence of commitment, it's the ability to choose the right ones. So, if you're one of them, if something in this resonates, here's your call to action. Stop apologizing for living differently. Stop explaining why you want freedom. Stop letting outdated expectations dictate your worth. Build your own portfolio. Write your own script. And remember, love, like wealth, only compounds when it's chosen freely. Not rejecting love, rewriting the rules. That's the quiet revolution. And it's already underway. Thank you for watching. If this message hit you, don't just scroll away. Subscribe, dive deeper into our content, and start building the mindset that puts you back in control. Drop a comment below. What's the biggest struggle you want us to break down next? Let's build a brotherhood of men who rise above confusion and reclaim their power. See you in the next video.